You may be familiar or have read books by Father Greg Boyle, the Jesuit, right? Tattoos in the Heart, Barking at the Choir. He's a Jesuit who serves in Los Angeles, offers a space for former gang members to gather, to grow, to be rehabilitated, to find God. If you haven't read either of those books, I highly recommend them. He's a wonderful storyteller, and laced in his storytelling are just profound insights about how the ordinary speaks to us of God. But anyway, he says this in his book, Barking at the Choir. He says, in a recent interview, Whoopi Goldberg was asked to name the living person she most admired. Pope Francis, she responded immediately. Yes, she added, he's going with the original program. He's going with the original program. And then Greg Boyle says, people know that the original program is about living the gospel with joy and always being mindful of the poor. The choir are drawn to the original program. So, I hope today I'm not going to be barking at the choir, but I certainly know I am speaking to the choir. Okay? So I'm very aware of that, sisters, as we begin and all the rich experience that each of you comes with as we gather today. So I want to say at the beginning that I'm going to be reflecting with you today in a way that I hope will be meaningful for both your personal journey and for your congregational journey. Okay? So whatever I share, I'm hoping you are going to hear on both of those levels. It's very important that I try and you try to listen on those two levels. Fran Dorff years ago in his book, The Art of Passing Over, this will tell you how old the book is and how old I am, but I know you'll understand me. He says we have to listen in stereo. That doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to call it surround sound, all right? So the surround sound, is that still functioning? So I encourage you that whatever I share with you today, you hear on two levels. And I'll try to guide your sharing time so that you can have conversation on those two levels, personal and congregational, because we're going to be reflecting with you on both of those journeys. So, I'm going to be using now this screen, so certainly I'm here captivating, your attention, but it might be helpful if you want to turn whatever's going to work for you, okay? Because I will be using this pretty consistently today. How is that visual with the lights dimmer? All right, I hope you can read it. Okay. So I've entitled this reflection for today, A Sliver of Light, Discipleship Along a Moonlit Path. And as Janet mentioned, I was an English teacher in my former life. Taught English for about 25 years. Taught high school English, I taught at our college. So for good or ill, you're going to be subjected to some of my favorite poetry and Lord knows what else. All right, so this sliver of light we're going to use for our prayer. It's from a poem by David White called Faith, but we'll do that in a minute. I want to offer an overview as we begin. All right, so I'm going to offer an image. See, as an English teacher, I'm a fan of images. My prejudice is you will carry with you an image more than 1,000 words that I offer today. Right? Images carry not only content, not only information for the mind, more importantly, they carry the feelings of the heart. Right? So I'm going to be offering this image today. I'm going to be offering a few of them, but this is the main one. My contention is that we are walking, we meaning women religious in the United States today. Okay? okay? No matter what congregation we find ourselves in. We are walking a journey that I'm going to image as a moonlit path, So for our first session this morning, I'm going to offer a description of what that looks like. And sisters, as I share with you today, I want to say, although I'm probably, you assume it, I'm not in any way speaking ex cathedra here, okay? But I'm offering you my best wisdom, my own experience, my own reading, my own prayer. I offer it to you so that you can grapple with it and come to your own landing place in terms of where you find yourself, where you find your congregation, all right? So for our first session, then, I'm going to reflect with you on what this path looks like. When we come back after the break, I'm going to offer what does commitment to this path look like? What does it mean for us to stay faithful to walking this path? Because it is, I would offer, a path of discipleship. And I will be using as a framework in this session, Father Ron Rolheiser, Holy Longing, Sacred Fire, okay? He says there are three, I hate this word, but for want of a better word, levels of discipleship. 3 levels of discipleship. What he calls essential discipleship, generative discipleship, and radical discipleship. I'm going to offer that, use that framework to talk about what kind of commitment we're being invited to make as disciples, walking this particular journey at this particular time in the history of religious life in this country. And finally, after lunch, I'm going to offer a reflection using the 3 women of the first 2 chapters of the Gospel of Luke. Mary, Elizabeth, and Anna, because they can serve, I think, for us as good companions as we try to walk this commitment to discipleship along the path that we're being invited to journey. Okay? So, I want to begin by looking at this pathway. I want to say at the outset, we walk this path as pilgrims. Janet told you I led pilgrimages in Rome and Assisi for 8 years. Okay. Did a lot of work with pilgrimage. I'm going to invite you to consider yourself in terms of these reflections this morning as a pilgrim. Someone has said that someone who journeys without being changed is a nomad. Someone who journeys without being changed is a nomad. Someone who changes but never goes anywhere is a chameleon. Someone who changes but never goes anywhere is a chameleon. But someone who journeys and is changed by the journey is a pilgrim. Someone who journeys and is changed by the journey is a pilgrim. Okay? I would offer that is our persona at this time in which we find ourselves in religious life. That we are on this journey and we are being invited to radical transformation on this journey. Not only personally, in terms of how we walk this way, but congregationally as well. Okay. So, the Moonlight Path, I would offer, is an image of what Sister Nancy Schreck calls the middle space. Now, Nancy Schreck, as you know, was president of LCWR, and in August of 2014, she gave the keynote address at the annual LCWR conference. That address was entitled, "However Long the Night, Holy Mystery Revealed in Our Midst." And she spends most of that keynote reflecting on what she calls the middle space. She says this: the shifting within religious life and in world events has taken us to what I call a middle space. Now again, as you hear this, Think of yourself, think of your congregation. We find ourselves in this place of both creativity and disorientation. Much of what was is gone, and what is coming is not yet clear. I want to talk about the middle space because that is where I believe we are in religious life at this time. Okay? So again, now you hear that and you need to say, do you buy that? Is that where you are? Is that where your congregation is? Okay? Because that's a critical assumption to what I'm going to offer this morning. Okay? If you don't buy this, you're probably not going to buy the rest of what I'm going to offer today. All right? So you think of your congregation now. Creativity and disoriented. Much of what was is gone. All right? I'm staying with Janet Gardner and Peg Markey in their townhouse in Whitehall. That's where I stayed last night. Okay? I know they're sisters for 1,000 years. But I haven't been back since the mother house was leveled. I can only imagine what that was like for those sisters. Just flat ground, where there was a hill, a big building, beautiful chapel, etc. Or, I can only speak of those I know. The Millvale sisters, now the Newman community, just finished leaving their mother house. Okay? I'm sure many of your congregations are in conversation. I know the Felicians also merged 7 provinces in the U.S., 1 in Canada. I've done a lot of work with the Felicians. Now they have 8 provincial houses, mother houses. Okay? All right, so many of you that I know in this room have felt what that statement says. Much of what was is gone, and what is coming is not yet clear. All right? So we are, according to Nancy Schreck, somewhere in between in terms of the history of religious life, and in terms, I would offer, of our personal history as well. I feel that Moonlight is an image, a good image for this middle space. It is what Nancy Schreck calls holy darkness, holy mystery revealed in our midst. The holy mystery of darkness, the middle space of moonlight. Okay? The daylight, in terms of the history of religious life, you know, the anomaly of the 50s and 60s. I entered in 1965. I entered with 65 other people. I made my Golden Jubilee last year. There were 10 of us. And only 4 died of those 65. So all the rest were left. Okay? So we're past what most historians of religious life say, the anomaly of the 50s and 60s, where we had large groups, like I just described, enter. The year after me, it was 30-some. That's how swiftly it started. Numbers, I'm talking now about numbers, moved down. Okay, so that's over. Okay, high noon, the OK Corral, that's done. That's done. All right. Now you need to say if that's true of you. Now again, we're talking about women religious in the U.S. of A. See, some of you have other provinces in other parts of the world. All right, that's not my focus. My focus is here. Whatever your major government entity is. Okay? Then we have the moonlight, and then we have the dawn light that has not yet come. All right? So I'm offering that this moonlight is this middle space. It is a time of darkness. Okay? But I would offer it is not a darkness that is a darkness to be feared, although I am afraid of it. It is a darkness that invites us into the mystery of God. Okay? It's darkness in terms of mystery. It's darkness in terms of what may rationally elude me. but a mystery that my faith invites me to walk around in. All right? So as I share with you today, I'm not here to offer any solutions to the time in which we find ourselves, no answers to the many questions. Okay? But I am inviting us to walk together around in the mystery of the holy darkness. And while we walk this path, there is a sliver of light to guide us. That sliver of light is our faith. Okay. Now, Pope Francis, in his document several years ago called Lumen Fidei, the light of faith. Okay. Now, I'm not a big fan of papal documents, but his are of a whole different, beautiful, beautiful. But anyway, in that Lumen Fidei, he says right at the outset, faith is seeing with the eyes of Jesus. Faith is seeing with the eyes of Jesus. Okay? So he says, you know, I'm from Missouri, show me. No. You know, seeing is believing. No, no, no. No, no, no. He says faith is believing is seeing. Believing empowers me to see whatever my reality is from God's perspective. Okay, it is not Pollyanna, it is not rose-colored glasses. It is acknowledging the reality, but it is the gift of being able to see it through the eyes of Jesus. So, with that context then, I'm going to invite us to pray. Okay, so you have the handout, that the other side of the schedule is what I'd like to use as an opening prayer for us. I'm going to read this poem by David White. Anybody, do you know David White? All right, David White lives on Puget Sound in Seattle. If you've ever heard him speak, he sounds like Richard Burton. And he's as handsome as the day is long. Okay. Anyway, he's a wonderful poet, if you like poetry. Or even if you don't like it, he's still a wonderful poet. Anyway, I'm going to begin with David White poem Faith, from which I got the title for our time. And then I'm going to invite us to listen to this, what I think is this lovely song, Age to Age. Okay? So wherever we find ourselves individually, in chronological age, all right? Wherever we find our congregation, the generation where we are, all that preceded us, all those generations, those that will follow us, whatever that looks like, okay? God is with us on the way, all right? So let's just take a moment of quiet then. I always say when I'm beginning a talk like this, I think I know what I just said. I have no idea what you heard. So let's just take a moment of quiet, hear what's stirring in us, and then I'll begin the prayer. Let's begin then in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I want to write about faith, about the way the moon rises over cold snow night after night, faithful even as it fades from fullness, slowly becoming that last curving and impossible sliver of light before the final darkness. But I have no faith myself. I refuse it, even the smallest entry. Let this then, my small poem, like a new moon, slender and barely open, be the first prayer that opens me to faith. And to this we say, amen. Amen. Okay. I want to talk a little bit now then about this middle space. This middle space. And again, I'm going to offer some images that others use to capture what this middle space looks like and feels like. Again, I refer to Nancy Schreck's talk to LCWR 2014. She says that for us in religious life at this time, the challenge is a prophetic one. I'm going to talk about that in the next session as well as after lunch. It's a prophetic challenge. And she says we are challenged to what she calls a theology of remaining. So I want to look with you at what this middle space looks like. And when we gather after the break, we're going to talk about what remaining might look like. So she says, the promise of life ahead cannot always be envisioned. Death is not an event that is concluded. Neither is life a victorious event that stands on the other side of death. There is a middle to this narrative, and it reveals a theological territory of remaining, however long the night. However long the night. Okay? don't know if you've ever had the experience of dying at any level, you know, personally in terms of loss, or I remember sitting with my mother her last 3 days in hospice as she moved through the dying process. And I kept vigil, tried to keep vigil there with her. And if I were really honest, I would have to say, although my heart was aching at the thought of her loss, there was something in me that couldn't wait for it to be over. For her and for myself. Okay, if you've ever had that experience. Okay? Francis called death a sister. Sometimes it is. Okay? And maybe that's how some of us feel right now. That we wish we could come to some conclusion, whatever, and be done with it. You know? I've been in renewal in the congregation. You know, I entered in 65 and 69, the year after I was professed, the constitutions were suspended. Bingo. You know, our formation was in Never Never Land. You know, so we've been in renewal since then. 50 some years for some of us. All right. So she's saying it's not an event that's over, and the new life hasn't come. So we're in this middle space. But of course, she says, as we know, particularly since we're in this Lenten time, we are in the heart of the Paschal Mystery that we're going to celebrate soon, right? Okay. It is not a state in which one gets beyond death. Instead, death remains in the experience, and life is reshaped in the light of death. This is what we are doing. We are trying to reshape the meaning of our life in light of the form of it that is dying. Are you hearing my distinction? Okay? Religious life isn't dying. The form of life into which most of us entered is. It's passing away, and it's not coming back. Okay? But in that dying process, we are reshaping the meaning of the life for whatever form it's going to take in the future that most of us are never going to see. And I need to know that. I need to know that I am not going to see probably what religious life will be, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And my challenge is to keep investing in it, even though I'm never going to see the fruits of my investment, of my labor, as it were. All right? Life is reshaped, not in light of its finality, but its persistence, sometimes unable to anticipate or imagine the life ahead. But we remain faithful, to whatever God is calling us in the time in which we find ourselves. Okay. So this middle space, this suspended space, this holy mystery of dark, this moonlit place, okay, Nancy Schreck says is a Holy Saturday place. Her image is, it's a Holy Saturday place. And we are to be, she says, Holy Saturday people. Okay. Now you think we're coming up to the Triduum, right? Good Friday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, the Vigil Sunday. Okay? But Holy Saturday is that middle place. Okay? Imagine what that felt like for the disciples, for Mary, for Jesus. Okay? Imagine what that felt like, what that darkness felt like when those women went to that tomb on Easter Sunday. Well, we know as Easter Sunday. Okay, they went to a tomb to pay honor to a dead person. We got to feel what that's like. All right. It is the movement, she says, and not the destination that constitutes a Holy Saturday people. Now, if you're a, Myers-Briggs? Yeah. If you're a JJ, like me, we hate this. We hate this. We want to get there. Sometimes we don't care where there is. We just want to get there and be done with it. No, that's not the time in which we are. So this is hard for the JJs of the world, including myself. Okay? It's the movement, the process, see? The persistent, the constitutive. It is a time of survivors. 10 of 65. Remnant. She'll use that term later. It is a time of survivors, of those for whom movements from death to life are uncertain and precarious. That's us. The task, she says, of remaining in this middle space is to pay attention to the reality that does not go away. But I would add, to see that reality with the eyes of faith. Okay? Sisters, we cannot bury our heads in the sand, right? And think we're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be 1960 again. It is not. It is not. So you bury your head where you want. Keep it there. When you come up, it's going to be what it is. All right? So I have to pay attention. It is a time of awareness. It is a time of staying awake. It is a time of rigorous, I'm going to offer this here, rigorous contemplation. Rigorous contemplation. Okay. So for Nancy Schreck, the middle space is Holy Saturday. Okay? Now, for Eric Law, who is, I'm not sure what his background, sociologist, but he is a founder of Kaleidoscope Institute. It's an institute for leadership development. Okay? He must be a wonderful man. He's an Episcopalian priest. Okay? He images the middle space as what he calls the graced margin. And he says the graced margin is the intentional stretched space between fear and safety. Now look at that image. At 3 o'clock on any given day when I'm brain dead, I do my images in PowerPoints. Say. And I think this is a particularly striking image that I found. Okay? That is what it looks like. That's what the middle space looks like. On the one side is where we are, fearful, trying to journey through the holy mystery of darkness. On the other side is safety. But to gulf, to bridge that chasm, the middle space, okay, I must pass through the Paschal mystery. See, so whether I image it as Holy Saturday, or whether I image it as the graced margin, it is going to cost me to make this journey. It's going to cost me. And it's going to cost me what it cost Jesus, and that is the stretch of love. Right? That is the stretch of love. It is, though, the space of transformation. Okay? If I can stay walking that tenuous extension that is the Paschal mystery, I will be transformed, and so will my congregation. How many times have I bewailed, oh, when is the congregation going to get it? When are they going to? The congregation is not transformed, sisters. Its members are. And only if the members are will the congregation be transformed. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Okay? Each of us has a responsibility to be attentive to the transformation God is asking of us. And the congregation then will be transformed. Finally, Carol Zinn. Some of you know Carol Zinn. She's the current executive director, of LCWR, Sister of St. Joseph of Philadelphia. She was, I think, president of LCWR as well, wasn't she at one point? Okay. All right. She also talks about the middle space. She gave a lecture to a group of treasurers of congregations gathered by the NRRO, the National Religious Retirement Office. This was in 2016. The talk was called Leading Today, Sustaining Tomorrow. And she images the middle space as a crossover space. Okay? She talks about the history of religious life, which all of us know, that there was all that anomaly of growth, the decline that we are experiencing, And then she says there will be a crossover and new life will emerge. Not that I can hold a candle to Carol's in, but I prefer a different order of things. Okay? I prefer to say that we are now in decline and we are moving toward this crossover place. Okay? I don't want to say this definitively, but many of us are close, I don't like this phrase, but of hitting bottom. See? We're kind of bottomed out in terms of decline, resources, personnel, closing ministries, all that we have experienced, okay? But I believe we're now in this crossover place. We're now in this middle space, and that growth will emerge. See, it's the same three entities, but I think how you look at it can shift your perspective, I would say, to a more hopeful one. All right? But what she says here, I think, is very profound, and I would offer very true. The future of the charism is not the same as the future of the congregation. The congregation does not have the charism. The charism has the congregation. Now, that's something to take in. That's something to take in. Okay? Certainly, I can only speak to my own. This is true of the Franciscan charism. It's been around for 800 years. The Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia come to completion, which we will. We will. Carolson says, if in your congregation you ever begin a sentence with the word eventually, she says, eventually is now. See, if I say eventually we're going to have to sell the mother house, I'm saying that. If you begin a phrase like that, she says, eventually is now. It's going to come upon you. Whether you want it to or not. But it's important, sisters, for me to realize, guess what? Sisters of St. Francis come to completion. The Franciscan charism is going to survive, trust me, in some form or other, okay? You look at the multiple congregations, I'm looking here at the Sisters of Humility of Mary and their branch, or the Sisters of St. Joseph, multiple congregations. Okay? You think that charism is going to die with any individual congregation dying? No. It is a gift given. It's the gift of the Spirit. God does not give a gift and take it back. God doesn't do that. That's not who God is. God gives the gift and it's given. So I think it's important for us to take a step back and remember, we do not have the charism. The charism has us. And I think that's a beautiful image, for me anyway. It's a feeling of being held in a safe place, despite where we find ourselves. The charism, that gift of the Spirit of our founders and foundresses, it's holding us in a safe place. And we need to hold it. And I'll talk about that when we gather after the break. Okay? So, the image I use for myself that has come to have meaning for me and that I offer you in addition to the other three is the middle space of Moonlight. Moonlight for me captures the crossover space that Carolson talks about. From daylight through the darkness to the dawn. It captures the stretching space that comes between fear and safety, that is the grace margin. It captures the Holy Saturday space between death and resurrection. So I've offered you now several images of the middle space. You need to decide in your own mind and heart, is that where your congregation finds itself? Okay? Or is your congregation not in decline? It's perhaps in a growth place. Okay? Or is your congregation coming up into a resurrected form? Right? But I would offer for most of us, we're in this middle space, however we image it. Okay? Again, I quote Greg Boyle. Okay? He uses a pun on the phrase, you know that phrase, now hear this, H-E-A-R, now hear this. He reflects on his daily experience with these young men and women who come to places called homeboys industry. And he says, when he reflects on his day, he tries to bring a presence to each day that is attentive to the now, whatever is that moment, attentive to the here, whatever place in which he finds himself, and attentive to the this, the event that is being played out before him. Okay? This, I would say, is a good summary of the invitation that the middle space offers. Okay? I need to be in the now. Okay? Walking down memory lane, and for some of us, trying to talk about the good old days or the bad old days, depending on our experience and our perspective, okay? That is helpful to some extent, but I need to be in the now, and I need to be in the here, wherever that is, whatever place I find myself. And I need to be attentive to the reality that will not go away, to whatever the this is, okay, that God is presenting before me in the events of my life. So I'm going to invite us now to have some conversation. I'm going to offer you just some quiet right at the table, okay, till about 10 o'clock. And then I'm going to invite you to have some conversation, okay? The questions that I'm going to put up here are on your handout. Okay. I'm asking you to consider which image captures what remaining in the middle space feels like for you in reference to where your congregation finds itself. Okay? What image gives the feel of what you're feeling or what your congregation is feeling? Does Holy Saturday image it for you and all that carried? The graced margin, if you remember that image that I showed you, the stretch of love. Okay? Is it Carol Zinn's decline and crossover? Is it Moonlight? Is there some other image that helps to capture what this time feels like for you? If your head assents, A-S-S-E-N-T-S, if your head assents to the fact that this is where we are, you need to get the feel of what that means for you as a member, okay? Because whatever that feels like, when we come back after the break, I'm going to talk about the invitation to remain there, wherever there is for you. And when you image that and when you feel that, what would it be like to have to stay there? What is it like for your congregation to have to stay there? Okay. Until that sliver of moonlight or that beginning of the dawn lights the direction for you in terms of the future of your congregation. All right, so the questions that I have up here, you have in front of you. So, and sisters, again, we're all been involved with, sharing the tables, right? So let me just offer this as we begin. Sharing involves listening, and it involves speaking. Okay, not everybody has to speak. Everybody needs to have an opportunity to speak. But not everybody has to speak. But everybody has to listen. All right? You know that if you build it, they will come? Okay. if I'm just talking in the air and nobody's listening, they're going to put me somewhere. You know what I mean? So we need listeners and we need speakers. Okay? So, all right. So let's just take, again, I think I know what I said. You want to hear what you're hearing. And then I'll invite you to some conversation. I'm going to close this time with just a reflective visual about Moonlight, moon in different forms, different phases, because when we come back after the break, I'm going to talk about, among other things, the phases of the moon and discipleship and a few other things. So the music you're going to hear in the background is called Moon Gazing on the Interlunar Sea. Moon Gazing on the Interlunar Sea. Daniel Kobialka, I don't know if you know his music, beautiful, beautiful, once more beautiful than the other. Anyway, I hope it's beautiful for you. Okay, I'm going to close with simply this contemplative moment for us together, and then I'll invite you to a break. Whether that break is a quiet break for you, you want to go to the chapel or outside, or you want to have conversation in here. Get coffee and all of that. I should have said at the beginning, you know, if it's a long sit for you, you know, we've been sitting for a while now, and when we regather, we'll be sitting again. And if you need to take a break or tend to your needs, please do that. And that doesn't distract me. I want you to be comfortable while you're here, so please feel free. All right, so we'll regather then after this at 11 o'clock. I'll begin for the next session. Thank you, sisters. Let's hope this works.